What if the only thing holding the galaxy together was the fear of an empty throne? In a fractured star empire, the disappearance of an emperor paves the way for chaos. But now, an ordinary human is mistaken for the rightful heir, and the entire universe begins to unravel. In the heart of a collapsing galaxy, there is no mourning, only silence. The cosmic emperor, ruler of 1,000 star systems, vanished without a trace. No heir, no successor, no warning. What remained was the throne, a monumental structure of obsidian and stellar alloys, floating at the edge of a black hole, waiting for someone who never returned. The empire fragmented in days, trade routes collapsed, alliances crumbled, and ancient hostilities, long kept under control by the mere shadow of the emperor's name, reignited, like dying stars reborn in flames. The Ythrax declared themselves the rightful successors, arrogant reptilian aristocrats, armed with ancient rituals and fleets forged in gravity furnaces. The Curim emerged from the void, beings of pure shadow molded by ancient hatred, feeding on fear and entropy. And the Maeli, divided among their own kind, cybernetic zealots, fractured between doctrine, data, and deities. In the center of this storm, a man without a title, without lineage, without purpose, was proclaimed, by mistake or by fate, the true heir to the throne of the void. He didn't want the crown. He didn't believe in destiny. He didn't even know why the throne accepted him. But across the galaxy, the stars began to whisper a name, and war followed. He never imagined standing before it, the throne of the void, a construct older than stars, forged in the silence of supernovae and the screams of forgotten kings. It floated above the event horizon of Varnax 9, where time bent and light died, a place cursed by physicists and worshipped by oracles, and yet it called to him. No crown, no ceremony, just a pulse, deep and ancient, echoing through his bones as he stepped closer. Sensors failed, cameras burned out. The Maeli monks who guarded the perimeter fell to their knees in binary prayer, and the throne awakened. For a moment, the galaxy paused, and in that breathless silence, the throne recognized him. Why? He had no bloodline, no heritage, no divine coding in his DNA, just scars, regrets, and memories of a world that no longer existed. He was a nobody. And yet, the throne chose him. Whispers spread like solar storms. Systems ignited in revolt. Assassins were dispatched. Prophets screamed. The Ythrax called it heresy. The Curim called it blasphemy. The Maeli saw it as prophecy fulfilled. And him? He saw only a decision, to sit and become the most hunted being in the galaxy, or turn away and let the galaxy burn without a center. Destiny isn't a gift, it's a trap with golden chains. And as his hand hovered above the cold obsidian of the throne, he realized this wasn't about power. It was about surviving the storm he had just triggered. The moment he touched the throne, he ceased to be a man. He became a symbol, and symbols must be destroyed. Before they ignite revolutions, the Ythrax moved first. Their warships, carved like celestial serpents, cut across space with hymns of domination. To them, he was a glitch in the cosmic order, an impurity, an abomination to be erased. The Curim didn't send ships. They sent shadows, living voids that crawled through systems and slipped into dreams. Wherever he ran, sleep betrayed him, and in every mirror, his reflection whispered things no human should hear. The Maeli split. Half saw him as a messiah. The other half as a virus in the sacred algorithm. Their drones debated in orbit while civil war brewed on. Their data moons. He couldn't stay in one place. He changed ships, faces, names. Each time he looked up at a sky filled with stars, he wondered which of them were already watching him. But in the silence between hyperjumps, he began to hear the throne's echo, not in sound, but in instinct. It wasn't calling him back. It was preparing him. For what? He didn't know. But the galaxy was unraveling. Worlds collapsed into rebellion. Old alliances ignited into war. And in the center of the storm was a man who never asked for any of it. But the throne had chosen, and now every faction wanted him, dead or crowned. He never wanted to lead. In truth, he didn't even know how. Back on Earth, he'd lived a life of routine, unremarkable, invisible, survivable. But ever since the throne had touched him, something inside had begun to shift. Not just dreams, visions, whole galaxies blooming and collapsing. Behind his eyes, worlds that did not yet exist, and others, long extinguished, that whispered their regrets. He began hearing voices when he was alone, not external, not imagined, but embedded, memories that weren't his, bleeding into his mind. And I, Emperor, whose name no one remembered, a child torn from time, a war that was erased from history, but not from reality. The throne had stored more than power. It held scars. And now, those scars lived in him. At first, he thought he was losing his mind. But then he realized the voices weren't madness. They were guides, not all friendly, not all sane, but all part of something bigger, a legacy too vast to hold, and too dangerous to ignore. Each vision revealed pieces of a design he couldn't yet grasp. A cycle, a lie told across centuries to keep the throne empty, until someone who shouldn't have it finally claimed it. Him. But he had a choice. Ignore the voices. Run, hide, or listen. And prepare for what was coming, because the throne may have chosen him. But it never promised he'd survive what came next. The silence ended with fire. 1,000 ships crossed the upper orbit of Velari Prime, a former neutral world now turned to ash. The Ythrax moved first. Their fleets gleamed with golden armor, etched in ancient runes. To them this wasn't war, it was purification. They called it a divine correction. A false heir had dared to place foot near the throne, and such blasphemy had only one cure: annihilation. But the man they sought had already vanished. Guided by instinct, or perhaps the whisper of unseen minds, he escaped in a stolen skimmer. One, built by the Maeli, powered by a forgotten pulse drive. Its signature, untraceable. Behind him, stars burned. Below him, a world cried out for a savior and received silence in return. The Curim watched from beyond the veil. They did not intervene. They did not warn. They waited. Because the shadows do not act until the fear ripens. Meanwhile, the man once known only as Drifter was given a name in sealed war councils and enemy scrolls: the False Flame. They expected him to hide, but instead, he sought out the only beings who might have answers: the fragmented Maeli, half machine, half belief. The Maeli had once served as guardians of the throne. Now, divided by prophecy and logic, they warred among themselves, and in their temple of fractured circuits and broken hymns, he made his first demand. "Tell me why the throne chose me." The Maeli priests whispered, "Because it remembers a future where only you survive." He felt it before he saw it, a shiver, not on his skin, but in something deeper, as if time itself held its breath. The Maeli temple had gone silent. Circuits flickered, lights dimmed, and then they arrived. The Q-Rim didn't need doors. They slipped in like a whisper between thoughts, figures of shadow, sculpted from darkness and ancient hatred, eyes that weren't eyes, just voids, observing everything, including him. They didn't speak in words, but in ruptures. Reality cracked around them, distorting the air. He reached for the weapon he didn't have, but the Maeli priests only lowered their heads. They knew. The Kurim weren't enemies. Not yet. A voice, thick and cold, slithered through his mind. The throne knows not blood nor honor. It knows balance, and you, unshaped and uncertain, are balance. He didn't understand. He didn't want to. The Kurim made no threats. They left none alive or dead, only the taste of dust in the air, and a warning burned into the walls. 3 voices, 1 choice, the throne decides, through chaos. What did it mean? The Maeli couldn't explain. The Ythrax wouldn't allow. It, and the Kurim, didn't need him to understand. They simply wanted him to walk the path. A path paved in paradox. He left the temple at sunrise, if it could still be called that, in a system where even light had started to fracture. And as he drifted through the debris of an abandoned war world, one thought echoed, if even the shadows claim him, what kind of emperor would he become? The star map guided them to a forgotten system, a dead zone ignored by the 3 great factions for centuries. There, in orbit around a black star, floated a structure that defied logic, a labyrinth of metal and memory, known only in legend as the Maze of Thrones. No doors, no guards, no instructions, just an open path leading the self-proclaimed heir into the unknown. Inside, time bent. Voices echoed in languages that no longer existed, and every corridor reflected not what was, but what could have been. He walked through mirrored versions of himself. A tyrant, crowned in blood. A martyr, sacrificing his soul for peace. A coward, running forever from a fate written in stars. Each version whispered truths, lies, warnings, temptations. The maze wasn't a place. It was a test. Not of strength. Not of strategy. But of identity. At the center of the labyrinth, he found it. Not a throne, but a fragment. A shard of the original artifact. The ancient core of the Void Throne. And when he touched it, he remembered, not everything, just enough. Visions of the past, of the first to wear the crown, of a promise broken by power, and a war sparked not by hatred, but by fear. The maze didn't choose a ruler. It revealed the truth, that no one who wants the throne should ever sit on it. And yet, it opened for him. Not because he was worthy, but because he was the only one still questioning if he should be. As he stepped out, changed, the factions watching from afar grew uneasy. The void had stirred, and the man who once fled destiny now walked toward it. The revelations from the maze did not bring peace. They shattered what little certainty remained. He now knew the throne wasn't built by a single empire, but forged in betrayal. A coalition of species, once united, had tried to share power, but ambition devoured harmony, and only one remained to write history. The Cosmic Emperor, the first and last to rule, had erased the others, not out of cruelty, but to preserve order. That's what the record said. But hidden deep within, the maze's fragment, he saw another version. The Emperor hadn't vanished. He had fractured himself, split his essence across the stars to prevent anyone, ever again, from claiming total control. The throne had never been vacant. It was watching, waiting, for someone not to claim power, but to restore balance. Meanwhile, the factions misread his silence as strategy. The Ythrax intensified their campaigns, broadcasting their divine right across the sector. The Kurim infiltrated minds, spreading fear like infection, and the Maeli fractured further, their leaders torn between prophecy and programming. He stood at a crossroads, holding a piece of a truth too large for any one being, should he reveal it. or let the galaxy keep believing in the illusion of a throne that could be ruled. And deeper still, a voice, not his own, whispered, "You are not the heir, you are the key. The throne does not grant power, it tests those who seek it." And so, with galaxies burning and warships aligning on every front, he made a choice, to find the remaining fragments, to uncover the whole truth, even if it broke the universe apart. In the far reaches of the galaxy, beyond the mapped zones and known trade routes, there was a frozen debris field, slowly orbiting a dim, dying star. There, among fragments of ancient stations and the husks of ships that never returned, rested the final piece of the throne, not in the form of a relic, but of a memory. The black capsule held an echo, a recording left not by emperors or generals, but by a child, a small, trembling voice, recounting her days inside a golden fortress. Before it all collapsed, she was the forgotten heir, daughter of the cosmic emperor, hidden, silenced, erased from history by the very ones who helped build the empire. She didn't die. She was sent away, not as punishment, but for protection, because her birth was not pure. She was the product of a forbidden union between imperial blood and a Maeli priestess. Her existence threatened every doctrine, every sacred order, and so she was forgotten. But her consciousness survived. Encoded in particles of light, she remained. Alive, observing, waiting, for someone who could hear her, and he did. Upon connecting to the fragment, the nameless man saw not only the origins of the empire, but the trauma at its core. The empire was never built on unity, but on silence, untie, erased voices, denied bloodlines, and in the quiet of that drifting capsule, a certainty emerged. The throne was never a symbol of power. It was a prison for the truth. And if he truly wished to restore balance, it wasn't enough to claim the throne. He had to free it. Free the ghosts of history. Free the forgotten. Free the heir. The battle for the throne was no longer just a political dispute. It had become a metaphysical storm, tearing through the very fabric of reality. The Maeli fleets clashed with the Ythrax dreadnoughts, while the Kurim emerged from dimensional rifts like living shadows, corrupting matter, time, and even memory. The galaxy screamed. Planets fell. And amid the implosion of old empires, he stood. No longer just a man, but a symbol of a future that terrified all. The throne floated at the center of a collapsing temple, surrounded by relics of an age that had devoured itself. It pulsed, as if it knew the decision was near. One step away, he hesitated, because taking the throne now meant more than ruling. It meant rewriting history, reforging broken truths, and accepting that power could not be purified, only confronted. Then she appeared. The heir, not of blood or doctrine, but of memory. The encoded child, now reconstituted into a projection of light, extended her hand, not to offer the throne, but to share it. Together they sat, not as monarchs, but as witnesses. The throne dissolved. In its place, a pulse of data and light spread across the stars, unlocking, healing, awakening. No more lies, no more lineage, only the raw truth, finally free. The void throne had never been empty. It had always been waiting for someone who would refuse to own it and instead liberate it. And in the silence that followed, across all systems, a single transmission echoed. The empire is not dead. It is reborn, in those who choose not to rule, but to remember.